Hi, I'm Shantae Jackson with Sandal Blue Foundation, and I am so excited that you are here for this resource conversation. These conversations are meant to help motor vehicle incident survivors and their families have tools, tips, and guidance. We are super lucky because today we have one of my very best friends, Leisa, here with us, and she's going to share a little bit about how you share all that information that's coming in after that wreck happens. Leisa, thanks so much for being here.
I'd do anything for you, Shantae. I'm very excited to be here.
I'm so glad you're here. And to start us off, tell us just a little bit about yourself, and then we'll jump into our topic.
Yeah, I'm Leisa Wallace. I live in Vernal, Utah, a small little town. I am obsessed with baby goats. I've known Shantae for probably about 15 or 20 years, close.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that
pretty
makes us
close to
seem
20
old.
years now. It does. When our kids were little, that's where I met Shantae. We lived in the same town, and I've been so grateful to be her friend since then. So that's my story.
Oh, I love it. Yes, Lisa has all sorts of kids, most of them goats, and it's always fun to visit and see. She has some new ones right now. They're adorable. I am also so grateful and lucky that you are my friend, and I feel that way every day. So I want to ask, what was your role after the wreck that my family was in? What was your role as far as sharing updates, and how did that come to be?
Yeah, my role was to post daily updates or multi-daily updates on the Carrying Bridge site. I was very grateful to have a role living so far away from Shantae and being such close friends with her. I wanted to be able to do something to help, and this was something I could do is relay updates to all her friends and family. So that was my main role during the whole thing.
And I honestly don't remember how that started. Do you remember?
Oh my goodness. I want to say I was asking, hey, what can I do to help? And you said, hey, you're an author. Can you write? Can you write updates for me? You had already found the Carrying Bridge site?
I think you had
No.
mentioned it.
I
Yeah.
had mentioned it, yeah, because my sister had used the Carrying Bridge site when her son had some medical things. And so, yeah, so I got the Carrying Bridge site up and running, and that is the link we gave everyone for updates.
Yeah. And it was one of the most helpful things ever for me as a survivor because I was in a place of like surviving, literally. And everybody wanted to know what was going on. And in our wreck, we had four people in one family affected. And so it wasn't just my circles that were asking, it was my husband's circles and my kids' circles, like, what's going on? What's the latest? Who's in surgery? Those types of things. And not only could I not physically do it, I didn't have the bandwidth to do it. And so for you to do it was such a big thing. And I encounter this all the time when I'm working with patients that they say I'm overwhelmed. I'm overwhelmed with trying to update everybody. Lisa, why do you think it's so important to have one person updating? And maybe it's different for everybody, but in our situation, why do you think that that was helpful or useful to just have kind of one person being in charge of that?
Well, I think it was really helpful because you set your expectations very clearly with what you wanted it to be. You were very clear that you wanted to focus on light and happiness, and you had some really hard things going on. And I feel like because you talked to me about it, I knew only to relay what you asked me to relay, not to put in my own thoughts and feelings about the situation, which when you have a lot of people trying to relay the same information, I think it could get skewed. I think people naturally, I mean, I often wanted to naturally put my own thoughts in but I knew how important it was to you. It made it easy continuity wise that I knew what was going on. I knew how it was to be relayed, and I knew just the steps to do it. And so that was really easy to just the technology part of it rather than having a whole bunch of people being like, well, this is what I think. Well, this is what she told me, but this is what I think. Um, it was very, it just kept things more consistent. And Also, you didn't have to worry about responding to 100 other people. You could just say, Lisa, here it is, update it or don't update it. Keep this private, keep this public. And so it made it really easy, I think, for you to know what you wanted to share.
Yeah, absolutely. And in that time, how did you get the information?
I got the information directly from you on text messages. And I remember when I first posted, I did make the mistake of being like, this is what I think we should focus on, or something. I remember putting something in there that was more my thoughts that was not in your text messaging. And you telling me very clearly, hey, will you go back and edit this? And you were so nice about it. But that made me realize, oh, okay, let me just put in exactly what she says in her text thread and don't do anything else. And that was really important too, because then it made it, it was your words. None of it was my words. And I think that was really important as well.
This makes my heart like so grateful for you because there's a lot of this that I don't really remember. There was, I mean, between amnesia, but then also just everything that was going on, my brain didn't have, space to hold all of this stuff. And I don't remember some of this. And, for those of you listening, if you're a helper, just to hear Lisa's words at like how comforting it was for me, for Lisa to really respect my wishes. And I really did feel really safe allowing you to share because you did respect my wishes. And I'm so, so grateful for that. One thing that I do remember as far as how you got the information, you mentioned that it was text, and it seems like you were in my family text thread. Is that right?
I was in your family text thread. I remember um, getting all the updates with your family, which was as the best friend, very like it made my heart so much calmer about what was going on, but it also made me have to be like, okay, is this just a family only thing or can it be shared? And so I had to make sure anything that was shared in that family thread was actually okay to share on the Caring Bridge site is what we used.
Yeah, and how did you decide that? Like how did you decide what to share and what to not and when? Like how did you
Right. I
determine
tried
that?
to share. I Especially in the first few days where things were happening so fast and the medical things were happening so fast. I shared several times a day. As soon as I got an update, if I knew you wanted me to share it, I would share it just right then. I would just copy and paste in the update. People were looking on your site often, several, 3 or 4 times a day, right? But when it came to deciding what I should share or not share, that all came from you, Shantae. I would not share something unless you said it was okay to share. And so that is where I decided. I didn't decide at all. You decided what was you wanted to share and what you didn't want shared, which I think was very powerful for you in a situation that was so uncontrollable in so many ways. Being able to set the tone for what people were hearing and the message they were receiving about your family, I think was very powerful.
Yeah, I agree. And, there wasn't any control really. And so I really appreciate that you allowed me to have some control, even if it was, just this little tiny thing. And I'm
Mhm.
trying to remember back some of the maybe guidelines that I gave. I remember vividly saying if it's like potty things, don't share.
I don't even remember that.
But and
Remember
right.
that.
Because I mean, in that situation, those are the things you're talking to your family about, And so if we're talking about, hey, somebody finally was able to go to the bathroom, and I think we maybe still shared that a little bit because it was a big milestone for some things. But do you remember any of the other guidelines? You mentioned that I said focus on joy or the light, but do you remember any other guidelines or maybe some ideas of things that people can think about of, hey, I'm going to help somebody share this information. These are some of the things I need to know, or what are some of the guidelines that they may need to think about?
I don't remember you giving me a lot of guidelines. What you even shared with me was very limited, what you shared with me and your family. I wouldn't say limited. It wasn't limited, but it was not the whole picture either. So I remember it was months until I actually even knew what had happened in the car crash. It was months before I actually knew the hurdles your family was going to have to overcome. And so really when it came to guidelines, I don't really remember you giving me any, other than I knew it was so important not to ask a lot of questions at the time. I wanted to know everything. I wanted to know all the details, all the ins and outs, all the like, oh my gosh, what happened? What happened to the other car? What happened to the semi driver? What happened to like everything? And I just remember thinking, okay, Shantae is like a faucet. She will turn on and give me the information I want and then turn it off. And it's not my job to turn on the information faucet. It's her job to give it to me as she's willing to. And so I think that was one of my own personal guidelines is I felt don't ask probing questions. Just let the information come as it comes. And so while I knew a lot, probably more than other people did, I still felt like I was very limited in what I actually knew. And I had to be okay with that.
Mm.
And I had to be at peace with that because I did not want to add more stress or overwhelm or anything like that to Shantae's plate. So I literally just waited for the information to come to me.
Wow. It's so interesting that you shared that because I didn't feel like I knew what was going on and it was me. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like it was multiple days before I knew what was going on with my husband and it was probably 2 days before I saw my son. And so it's one of those things that everybody wants as much information as they can because you're going to worst case scenario. And for me, it was like it actually is. Some of those worst case scenarios are actually happening, but also we don't really know what it means and we don't know what the next step is and we don't know what the probability is and all of these types of things. And so it's interesting to hear, your perspective that you felt like you didn't have a lot of information maybe given to you, but I don't know that I even had a lot of information to give. And that can be unsettling. Like you feel
Right.
very out of control too, because like you mentioned, you didn't live by me, you weren't close in proximity, and what you had felt like very little, and that feels out of control too. What I had was very little.
I
It
had
really
never thought
was.
of it. I had never thought of it from your side before, but that's true. You probably also had very little. And I don't think it does anybody any good to be like, well, what about this? Well, what about this? Well, have you tried this? Well, have you tried that? Like, that does not help a person who is just trying to survive.
Mm,
It doesn't. And I feel like when it comes to being the communications specialist, you are on the receiving end. You are not there to give them advice. You are not there to give them a TikTok thing you saw that might help reduce pain. What you're there is to love them and to relay the information to people who
mhm.
love them, and that is it.
That's such a,
And I think
yeah.
that's really important.
That's a really good message. And it's so funny because I will look back and you literally would copy and paste my texts. And I only had one usable hand at the time. And almost everything is spelled incorrectly. And you would just keep it that way. Like you wouldn't even correct my spelling errors.
I have actually thought back to that a couple times, like, should I have corrected that? Yeah, I probably should have, but I
I
didn't.
I actually quite like it because I will look back and that was what was real. That was the update. Words that didn't totally make sense or grammar that was incorrect or words spelled wrong. Like that really was what was happening and that was, to be honest, that was part of the update was I'm not quite good enough to get these things right yet. And that wasn't what was mattering, right? Like that wasn't the priority.
Well, I'm glad you don't um think too poorly of me because I am a writer. I just knew if I was going to go in and correct the grammar, I would want to correct everything and it would skew it to what my view was and not your view. And I knew that about me that I just knew to copy and paste.
And it's a really good idea for people. And I think it's something that people can check in on. Hey, I would love to help you by getting the communication out of updates. What do you want? Do you want it to be your exact words? Do you want me to talk to the doctor? Like what is it that you're wanting me to convey and how important that is? Because that establishes a trust and a safety net and an ability to control something like we talked about. So I think that's a really important thing. Now, you've mentioned multiple times that the way that you conveyed updates was through something called Caring Bridge. Tell us a little bit more about what Caring Bridge is.
Yeah, Caring Bridge is a website that has been built specifically for people in to help update their family when they're in the hospital. It's called the Caring Bridge site. It is run on donations, which can be a powerful thing. And yeah, it's free to use for you to use, and so you can use it as much as you want, as many times a day as you want. It doesn't cost you anything. So it is a really powerful way to utilize technology without having to pay for it in this situation.
Yeah, for sure. Do you remember a lot about how to set it up? Was it complicated? Do you remember any of the
It was
steps, those types of things?
no, it was so easy. I just went on, I mean, I just Googled Carrying Bridge is what I did. They make you have a email address. And so I wanted an email address that Shantae could eventually take over. So I just made one for her, is what I did, and made the email and the password. And then once you sign in, it's really easy. It's not hard to use. I feel like I'm rambling.
No, you're right. Yeah, I remember that too. I didn't know that you had made me an email address until way, way, way later. And you had created an email to be kind of the login for Caring Bridge. And you had given it to me at whatever point I asked for it. But then that way you could get on, you would do an update. It had a timestamp, which people really, really liked that because it would have the date and the time of the update. And eventually, I remember we got to the point that every day you would do an update for each person. So at
Yes.
first it was like immediately as things were happening because so much was happening. And then like, I don't know, maybe a week or two in, then it was like I said, there's four of us in our family. So you would list each person and you would group together the updates from that person from that day so that if, my husband's colleagues were who was looking at it and they were more interested in his updates than mine, they could get on and kind of just look at his type of a thing. Same with my son's friends. They could get on and just look at their specific updates. And I know that that was something that was really nice too. It's, like anything in technology these days, that there was a way for people to comment. There was a way for people to do like best wishes, that was something that wasn't just a comment on one singular post, but kind of an overall thing. One thing to note, if any of you want to try Caring Bridge, is it is ran by donations, but it's important for you to know that if something comes up when you're looking at an update of Caring Bridge about donating, that donation is going to go to Caring Bridge. It's not going to go to the family that you're looking at updates for. So if you're wanting your donation to go to the family, you'll need to ask somebody, hey, do you already have some sort of fundraising tool for this family? Because if you do it within Caring Bridge itself, it's going to go to the platform. So that's something important to note for people as well.
Right. And I remember once I realized that donations would go to Caring Bridge, my first sentence of every update was, if you'd like to donate to the Jackson family, use this link, not the one on the side. And I made sure that they knew that it was separate, so that's important too. And also, I think it's important to know you can decide who you want to see your site or not. I know at one point in time it was open to anybody, and then we closed it down just to people who had signed up to get updates. And then I don't even know if it's open anymore. Um, so it does not have to be open to the public forever. And also, you can put pictures on it as well.
Yes, yes, which is a really wonderful tool, right? A lot of people want to share pictures. For me personally, I didn't want to share any. As mentioned, I was really focused on progress. And so I was hesitant to share pictures of certain people in certain situations at times. But when there were things that were showing progress, it was really fun to share that and videos. There's also a capacity to share videos. And that was really, really important for people to be able to see, in physical therapy or learning how to transfer from a bed to a wheelchair. Those types of things are a really, really awesome way to update people through something visual.
Yes.
Now, Lisa, I'm curious some practical tips that you have for people if they're wanting to take on this role of being, you called it the communication expert, which I love. You should definitely wear that badge, best friend and communication expert.
I think I should totally wear that badge
Yes,
forever.
definitely. Yes. But what tips do you have for the communication expert? You've mentioned a couple things already, but what else do you think is important for that person to kind of recognize or know or do?
I think it's a lot what I talked about. Make sure you know what you is to be relayed is what the patient wants relayed. Don't relay any of your own. I think we all should do this or this or this. That is not helpful unless they ask for it. The other thing is, it does not have to be perfect. People just want to know what's going on. Like Shantae said, I literally just copied and pasted with the mistakes and that was okay. Another tip, just be respectful. Know that the information she's given you is, or I say she because you were the one giving them to me, but the patient is giving you, um, that information is kind of sacred, is very vulnerable. Make sure that who you're sharing it with is who she wants it shared with. Don't go blabbing it all over to the whole world if that was not the point of her giving you that information. Make sure you really stick to the point of why that information is being shared. And so those are the big tips and tricks I have. Also, the more information, I don't want to say the more the better, but if you need to update a couple times a day, do it. People are anxious, especially in those first couple days. Don't wait till the end of the day till you have everything. Just be like, this is what I know now. Now, this is what I know now. Just because the people who love them are anxiously waiting as well. So, those are my tips. Like,
Now, something just to point out is that it can be a little bit overwhelming to manage all of this information. And so that's something that you want to be aware of as well and figure out what works well for you, right? Lisa's mentioned for her, what worked well is to just get the information out right away. One other thing I just want to touch on that I just remembered that we did is we said something, we set some kind of expectations and boundaries. One that I set that I had you communicate was please don't call or text to get this information. I am not in a place. I love you. Thank you for caring. We're running a marathon. There will be a time that I'll need your help, but right now is not it. And I remember having you include that in some sort of an intro thing that stayed sticky on the page. And was there any sort of, management tools or boundaries or expectations that you had set as well?
you're asking me such deep questions, but honestly, no.
Okay.
My whole purpose was to communicate what you wanted communicated. That was my boundary, is to make sure it came specifically from you to the people you wanted it to. And I remember there was sometimes you would text me and be like, "Don't share this, but I just have to get it out."
Yes.
And that's powerful too. Like you need somebody that you can share the hard things with without having it go to everyone. And
Yeah.
so that was one of my boundaries too, is to really respect your family, your growth, how you wanted to, the lens you wanted to look things through.
Yeah. And I'm remembering that a lot of what was communicated was when I didn't say anything. We had kind of had this unsaid rule that was like, if I don't say much about it, you're okay to share it. But if I'm like, no, for sure, don't share that thing, then you knew that that was the thing. And you also wouldn't share what the family said. That was kind of a guideline that we had set. You're in a family text thread and lots of people were there. Our family was there at the hospital with us. So they would, share updates and stuff too. But you would always check, hey, is that an update you want shared? If it wasn't something I was specifically saying. So again, just kind of figuring out what's going to work well for the people that you're helping out and who you're sharing it to.
You know, for someone who says you don't remember a lot about this, you're remembering a lot more than I did.
It's coming
About
as
what
we're
you asked
going.
me to do. But you're right. I do remember being in that family thread and me asking, is this something you want shared or not? Yeah, because your family was with your kid more than you were
Yep.
at that point. You were still healing. And so they knew things that you were aware of, but maybe didn't want shared with everyone.
Yeah, absolutely. Lisa, I really appreciate you in that moment, and I really appreciate you being willing to share with other people who are going through this because it is just sharing information is such a large thing. Before we end, are there anything that you would like to share or that hasn't come up or something that you'd like to leave survivors and their caregivers with?
You know, one of my favorite things I actually did is Shantae would sometimes text me messages that other people sent her, like inspiring messages, or I ended up putting anything somebody sent her as an inspiring message into a book for her. And so when it was all over, any kind of motivational content that she got, she could just open up and look at it in a book for when she was having hard days. And that was one of the fun things I got to do as well. And that was my favorite thing to do for her is at the end of the day is to compile these messages from people who loved her and were cheering her on and praying for her from all over the United States. And put them in a book for her. So
And I will never forget when I got that book, being like, oh my gosh, like these were nuggets. Like in those moments, they were everything. And to know that you cared enough to keep them and to actively do something with them for me to have and to cherish forever was something I didn't expect to come out of it. And I'm so grateful that I would send them to you just as a friend, like, look, like I got this. This person is encouraging me. But what great insight you had to track those things and to keep them in a way that I could keep forever. And what a gift and a joy to have that. Thank you, Lisa, so much for being here. We appreciate you and are cheering you on in all of your endeavors. And for all of you listening, we hope that this has made your road a little bit easier.